Alright guys, so welcome to Wire Sculpting Tutorial Part 1. So, this is just going to be a bit of an explanation. This is not a practical video, that'll come a little bit later. So, let's dive straight into this video. So, what we have here is what I'm going to be showing to you in this video. So I'm going to go through design, measurements, stages, technique, resources, and what we will be making. So I'll show that at the end of the video. Alright, so ideas and design. This is the first thing you need to think of when you're thinking about creating a wire sculpture. So what I recommend is take your time. When you're sketching up ideas and designs, you really just need to be in the mindset of, sky's the limit, think of anything you want. However, the one question you need to ask yourself when you're designing something is, can I actually create this out of wire? It is a great question to ask. There are limits, and the limits, you can work with them, but it's a lot harder. So down here, I'll show you guys this girl here. She's Jinx. I made her recently. She was fun to create, but she was very difficult, and I'll tell you why. So see how all her joints are very close together. Her arm is really close to her knee. You can't see, but her other arm is actually resting on her leg on the other side. Things like this actually make it really hard to weave wire around the sculpture, because you're trying to get into these little grooves and pockets in the sculpture that's actually quite difficult to get into. And it can be hard to wrap wire around certain places because wire just gets stuck on different things. Whereas this one on the right here, move my head out of the way, this sculpture, it is a weak design. I'll tell you why. That's to do with story more so. But this was a lot easier to create than this one on the left here, simply because her whole body is just completely flat. Everything is sort of facing away from each other. Her arms are out, they're not right beside her, which makes it a lot easier to create and a lot easier to wrap wire around. So the next thing you want to think about is whether your designs are going to be strong or weak. So I have that here. Strong designs, they will include a great story and a wow factor. This wow factor can be to do with how you use the material itself in a creative way, or it could simply be to do with weight distribution, things like that. So like in this one, I have the pole genuinely stuck into the ground. That's the base of the sculpture, and then you got the sculpture on the top, and the weight is not above the base of the sculpture, which creates an illusion, and people will wonder, how is this standing? So that can be a wow factor, and I actually often quite like doing this. The one on the left here is quite similar actually. The weight distribution is sort of, it kind of goes in an arrow shape here. It's a little bit different to just a girl standing on top of a timber piece like Astrid on the right here. So I think actually, a few more things is to do with, can you create something that is frozen in time? So you need to pick an important moment, a pinnacle moment in time, where your sculpture is frozen in the middle of emotion, doing something that's going to tell a story that can really capture people's attention. If you're just making this for fun, look, it doesn't matter so much. If you're looking to sell these, or maybe a bit more than that, then yeah, I would think about trying to find a pinnacle moment in time that will tell a story and create a movement to the piece. Movement is very very important. You don't want a static piece, it just sort of looks a bit boring. So yeah, take your time. I've created 3 important factors to the design stage, and that is idea, technique, use of material, and story. So use of material is very important. This is how you're going to create the actual sculpture. Whether you got to think about how you're going to use your wire in a way that's completely different to how someone else has used it before, and that can come back to like a wow factor. People go like, wow, look at that craftsmanship, that's completely different to anything I've ever seen before. Story, also very important. That sets up really just the basics of the actual design itself, and that's what connects people to the actual sculpture. And then of course the last one is design. So it's just freezing a moment in time, finding a design that works, that you can create, and one that just looks incredible. Alright, so moving on to measurements and human anatomy. This is very important, at least to me it is. I find that this helps a huge amount to creating sculptures that are as close as to perfection as possible. I know people don't do this, they don't measure anything out, they don't bother learning the human anatomy, but I definitely recommend doing it if you want to create better sculptures. So this is a framework here. This is one of the most important stages of making a sculpture. This is where you got to get your measurements down to the dot perfect. And not just the measurements, but when you're creating it, you really just need to be really careful with how you're putting it together, making sure everything is as close as to the measurements as possible. It doesn't matter so much if they're out slightly, because you do end up adding like a cage and filling it out and creating the skin layer around it anyway, and you can kind of change things up as you go, but it's still very important because this is what you're working off. And to be fair, it actually can trick your mind sometimes into thinking it needs to look a certain way. Like if you got it slightly out, as in if your two muscles in the middle here, like you got on this framework, there's two muscles in the middle. If you got them slightly out, like massive space between them, then odds are when you're creating your sculpture, they're still the same muscles, and so instead of your back, coming out to maybe here, or like the side of the stomach, I guess, it'll probably come out a lot further, and it just won't look right. So make sure you get your frame right. It's really important. So yeah, next thing is anatomy. This is just learning where all the muscles sit. It's also the skeleton of the body, and it's just sort of learning how you're meant to wrap wire around in the right ways to portray each muscle, to show each muscle, because most of the time, and I'll go to this next slide, it'll actually show you that our brains think of a body in shapes and not little detail, not little bumps. So this in the middle here, I created this to show you guys sort of a simple version of a male body, right? So you got the oval head, the rectangular abs and the cylindrical arms and whatnot. What you don't realize is that, well, you could realize, but there's so much more detail in the body than just these basic shapes. And a good way of showing this is I've got this other drawing on the right here, and I've created these two little balls here. Now if you think of just a normal butt, honestly you probably just think of two balls together, and when you're sculpting it's very easy just to create those two balls side by side. What you don't realize a lot of the time is all of these little intricacies within the actual shapes of the waist and the butt. Where it's got like this C-shaped dome here, and they kind of intersect in the middle here. And there's like this little diamond, you probably see it better on this drawing at the bottom here. It's got like this diamond shape, and that's actually like a small little fat pad, believe it or not. I know, it's strange. Obviously it's different between men and women, obviously, but simple things like this, when you start learning anatomy, you start understanding all the little curves and the bumps that actually need to be in place for it to look realistic. And to be fair, when you're making small sculptures, it is really hard to get that detail. When you're making large sculptures, this is something that's really necessary to learn. And I think I figured that out during the process of making so many sculptures. I finally started learning anatomy. So I'm not professional at it all, still learning as well. So yeah, I think it's important. So yeah. Alright, so why sculpting, has stages. Now, look, I made 10 stages. You don't have to go by this. This is just what helps me. I know Robin White over in UK, he has stages to his as well, and he just sort of says like each stage you do is, you're just completing one stage to build for the next one. So you just keep building up till you reach the last stage. So I've created 10 stages. First one is design, right? You know that, talked about it. Second one is measurements. You've got to get everything as perfect as possible. Then you've got the framework, you got to create that, which is the skeleton, like the stick figure sort of thing. And then you got cage. Cage is making like a light, like 3D shape of the actual body, trying to get everything sort of in shape, I guess. Filling out the body is number 5, and that's getting, probably like maybe 4 strands, 6 strands possibly of, a certain gauge of wire, and you're basically just filling out the body in all different ways. And we'll go into techniques soon, but one of the main things with filling is you don't want to be wrapping around the body, you want to be weaving in and out, so you're filling the inside of the body. The cage is for getting the shape, filling is for filling out the shape. You don't want to add to the outside layer, otherwise that's just going to mess up the actual shape of the body that you're trying to create. So number 6, we've got shaping. This is important. I normally do this honestly most of the way through the whole process, like through a lot of these stages, is I have this little hammer and I'll just smooth out bumps and things like that, and I'm just like trying to get the right shapes on things. So like sometimes you create maybe the legs too big, just get the hammer and you hammer it down until you can get the correct shape that you want in the legs and whatnot. So number 7 is detailing. This is for more larger sculptures, like if you're creating a nose, you'll do that last. If you're putting breasts on for a girl, you'll be doing that last. And when you do that, you actually go back to the cage stage. So you go cage, filling, shape it, and then we skip the detailing because that's what we just done. For males, you don't need to do anything. This is pretty much irrelevant. We'll go straight to 8, which is skin layer. This is pretty much one of the last things you need to do, at least for the whole body. This is where you're weaving in and out of just the surface of the sculpture. You're not filling it out anymore, unless it's necessary and you sort of miss that, do that. But this is just getting that final touch on the skin layer, making it look nice, just finessing your piece. Number 9 is hair. This is again just for girls. I don't tend to put any hair on any of my males. I haven't done that yet. You can if you want to. But yeah, for a small sculpture I just keep it hairless just because it's easier just to tell that it is a guy without the hair. So I keep them bald. But yeah, number 9, keep on doing a girl, that'll be the hair stage. You want to do that last simply because it gets in the way of when you're weaving wire in and out. It can get quite annoying. So I always do hair last and definitely recommend that. Next thing is the last one, refinement. This again is similar to shaping. You're going around, you're hammering the sculpture out, smoothing any bumps, and there's going to be wire that is loose. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to tighten that. I'll show you like how to actually do that in the other practical tutorial videos that will be coming up. And yeah, you're basically just smoothing out the whole body, making sure everything's in the right place, making sure you're happy with the sculpture. filling out little gaps with wire if you need to, and you spend a few hours refining your sculpture. And then of course you could have stage 11 if you wanted to. I guess it's a little bit different. I don't have it down there, but if you're wanting to create a timber base, that's also probably the last thing I would do. You could do it at the start, but things change when you're creating a sculpture, and sometimes the first design you started with doesn't end up being the one you end up with. So yeah, I create my timber bases separately. I do that last. Alright, technique. So there's many ways to create wire sculptures. You've probably seen heaps of different wire sculptures out there. They're all different. If you go onto Pinterest and type up wire sculptures, they'll genuinely come up with single strand sculptures that have gaps in them, and they don't quite have this multi-strand look to them. There are a few that are like that, I know, but most of the time people tend to create single strand wire sculptures just because I guess it's a lot easier to do. But for me, I really like the look of multi-strands, so I get heaps of strands together, I tie them up at the very end, and then I start piecing them through the actual sculpture. This helps fill out the sculpture a lot faster. I also just think it looks a lot nicer in the end. It just gives it a bit of a unique style, I guess, and it's I just really like it, and it stops the sculpture from having a bunch of gaps in it. So it looks dense, and it is dense because you're filling out the whole sculpture. So the next thing is don't wrap wire, weave it. That's very important. I know people who weave wire and it ends up being really loose in areas because it's being wrapped around. And the other thing as well with wrapping wire is that it actually adds to the skin layer on the outside, so it's creating a thicker surface than what you actually originally wanted to, and yeah, that's just not what you want. So you want to be piercing holes through with like a nail, a spike, a screwdriver, whatever you can find that's small, that's similar size to the actual wire you're passing through. You don't want to make a massive hole through the body or anything like that. So yeah, weave wire in and out of the sculpture. So I don't wrap any of mine really. Alright, next one. Use a hammer to smooth out surfaces. Yeah, so I talked about that. Definitely use a hammer. It's very handy. You'll notice if you go around the surface of this girl here, you can see it's actually this way quite smooth. There's no bumps really anywhere. That's because I use a hammer, so definitely do that. You don't use single strands. Yeah, so we talked about that. Don't use any single strands unless you want to, unless you prefer that style, go ahead. But in this tutorial I'm going to be using multi-strands, so make hands and feet separately. Yeah, so during the framework I'll create the hands and feet separately and add them onto the framework before I go on to the next stage, which is adding cage to it. I do this because you gotta add, a little bit hard to explain. I'll probably explain it a bit better in the actual practical videos, but you just, when you're going to the filling stage, you want to fill out the whole calf, right? If the feet aren't there and you're filling out the calf, it's going to be harder to attach the feet to something that's already dense. You need to add it before things get dense, so that those wires get strong within the sculpture, if that makes sense, so it becomes part of the framework instead of some external piece that'll be wiggling around and honestly could probably fall off. So yeah, you want to do that first and you do them separately. Use a spike screwdriver, you talked about that. Layer the wire diagonally to make it look more natural. Yeah, so this is a technique I use. I don't like to feed the wire horizontally or vertically, just because it doesn't look very natural, doesn't look very good. It can sometimes, like this is one in the leg right here that's guess sort of horizontal, and that looks nice there. But most of the time, yeah, if you look at the sculpture, it's all diagonal. It's all everywhere crisscrossed. It just looks a lot more natural, brings a nicer flow to the actual sculpture, and I guess you'll see for yourself if you try doing vertical and horizontal lines, it'll look very different. So yeah, they're the techniques I use. Yeah, we'll go on to the next one. Resources. So heaps of people ask where I get my wire from. I started getting wire from Bunnings. That's where I first bought wire. That's all galvanized, so it will rust if it's outside, though I doubt you're going to do small sculptures outside. I buy stainless steel now because I prefer the shine, and I also need it for my large scale sculptures that sit outside. So yeah, I recommend galvanized. You just get it from Bunnings. You can get it in small packs or a bit larger coils. You want to buy anything from 0.5 up to 1.2 for small sculptures. You'll probably be doing like 2 strands of 1.2 to make a framework, 0.9 to make a cage, 0.7 for the rest of the filling. Sadly, I think galvanized only goes down to 0.7. I haven't found anything thinner than that, but stainless steel here goes down to 0.5, which is why I just also like it a lot better. I've been getting that from Fantasy Wire. I've been looking for a few other local places, but haven't had too much luck recently. No one seems to get back with emails, which kind of sucks. But Fantasy Wire is great. You can get some good wire from them, and in the correct sizes that you need, and it just works really well. Other things is like iron wire and copper wire. I know people who use this. I haven't necessarily used it. I've used copper coated, just like normal steel wire. That's hard to bend. I don't like it, but I have used it before. I recommend avoiding fence wire and welding wire. You can get away with some welding wire, to be fair, but it's a lot more expensive for a lot less of what you're actually getting, so that's why I don't recommend that. And fence wire is just very dense and hard to bend, and also like a lot of welding wire as well is hollow, so yeah, don't use those. Try to go for galvanized tie wire or stainless steel wherever you can. Alright, so this is what we're going to be making. So I designed this guy quite a while back. I was looking through some of my photos, found this guy, and like, that would be pretty fun to make. And I think I did a different sketch of a similar thing. I don't have it here, but pretty much it's going to look like this guy on the right here. It's going to be up in the air like this. And what I'm thinking is you guys can create your own, design your own weapon for all of this. I'm going to design one. You can choose to copy it if you want. It may not be actually that sword that I have there. It'll be a little bit different. And then the feet will look a little bit like this angel one here. It might be a little bit hard to see. But the feet basically aren't there, and it's just going into the wire. So yeah, it'll look like this on the right here. So a bit of fun. Definitely keen for that. Might be a few videos. I'll probably go through all the stages that you can all follow. It'll be practical. So yeah, guys, I'm at 840 subscribers to date. I'm hoping to reach 1,000 within at least the next 2 months. I think that would be awesome. Thank you all for your support already. Please have a look at my Instagram. I've got plenty of photos on there if you want to see a bit more of what's going on. Have a look at that. I've got a few reels on TikTok, and then of course got heaps of videos on YouTube as well that are ready to watch. I'm going to have my gallery in the description. There'll be a link to that. It's a bit of a portfolio. There'll be an About page and a Contacts page that I've created. It's got a bunch of photos on there as well. You can have a look at that if you want to. So yeah, thank you guys. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, and comment if you feel like it. And I'll see you all next time. See you guys.